practice group meeting. Our topic for today is outline specs, useful or not. Our thought leader is David Stutzman, CSI, CCS, AIA, SCIP, Lead AP. For those of you who are new to the group, Dave is a registered architect and founding principal of the largest independent architectural and engineering specifications consulting firm in the United States. He has 35 years of experience in specifications, preliminary project descriptions, and quality assurance reviews. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. Your participation during today's webinar is encouraged, and Dave is allowed time to take your questions throughout the presentation. Although attendee audio lines are muted, you may click the Raise Hand button to indicate that you have a question or comment. We will identify you by name and unmute your line, at which point you may begin speaking. If you are participating via streaming audio and do not have a computer microphone, you may also type your question into the chat box. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dave.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to, I guess this is our third session on the Specifying Practice Group. And we're talking about outline specs today, whether or not they're useful. This was one of the topics that the group had actually selected as a higher priority. And I hope that we have some of our other specifiers on the line with us today. I'd like to make this as much as we can a dialogue instead of a monologue. If I can get through only a couple of the individual screens here, would make me happier. I'm just trying to facilitate the discussion, and we'll see where this all takes us. So just a little bit of a background for you, and so that you understand some of my bias and my own perspective on this, is I've recently been encouraging some of our clients actually to avoid outline specifications, actually in favor of developing preliminary project descriptions. And I've had some that have taken me up on that suggestion, and for those it's been working out very well. I still have a lot of clients that are still demanding outline specifications, and some of that I believe is a result of their own individual contracts. So what I'm hoping to do today is just explore what is out there, what is required, what everybody is actually doing for outline specifications, and whether or not there are some alternatives. So, Erica, can you help us out with the first poll? We'll find out what your attitudes are so that we can help use that to guide the discussion as we go through the presentation today.
Okay, we'll give it a couple more seconds for people to...
How many do we have online total? Do you know?
We have 29 online.
Okay. Everybody get their vote in.
I'm going to close in about
really
10 seconds.
Stuff.
Okay.
And the magical results?
Can you see the results?
No, I can't.
How about now?
Oh, there we go. Okay, so while we still have an overwhelming majority, it looks like, that are still at least sometimes producing them, followed closely by seldom. That's an interesting result. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on and see what happens out of all of this.
Okay.
All right. See if we can get this going. There we go. So what I want to do is just run through some of the issues, I think, surrounding outline specifications, and really who are the authors, because I think that this is causing some of the concern, at least the concerns that I see from our work and our projects that we're working on. So generally, I see the architects seem to be driving the need for the outline specification. Engineers and specialty consultants seem to be reluctant participants. Oftentimes what we find is that the engineers and the specialty consultants are ones that want to start the outline specification by actually producing construction specifications and turning them in as their response to an outline spec. I mean, here are some of the consultants and engineers that we're finding that we have to deal with on outline spec projects. And the ones that are mostly the specialty consultants, the designer, food service, security, auto-visual, most of them are working a lot with data sheets, which really doesn't lend itself well to outline specs. The engineers, on the other hand, I don't know how often they're actually asked to produce outline specs, but I would think that it's pretty rare, usually based upon what we're seeing them produce.
I have a comment from Clifford Martin.
Yep.
They typically use 3-part specs with part 3 cut off.
Okay.
And we have a question. You list a lot of consultants that may contribute. How can we assure consistency?
An excellent question. And that's one of my big questions, too, when I start talking to the architects, especially as a spec consultant, because we have virtually no clout to enforce the specialty consultants or the engineers to do anything. It really has to come from whoever is holding their contract. So the only way that I could suggest to actually make that be consistent is to ensure that the architect or the primary designer be able to enforce it contractually. So I don't know, does that answer the question, I hope? I want to move on.
Yes,
Okay. We'll move on here to why outline specs are written. And one of the issues is actually a contractual issue. If the designers are working under AIA requirements, this is text right out of AIA B101, which actually requires outline specifications as one of the design development deliverables. So unless you're modifying the construction or the owner-architect agreement and you're using AIA, you're actually obligated to provide outline specs. Now, there's no definition under AIA documents as to what an outline spec is. So I think that that's where we can take maybe a little bit of freedom or a little bit of innovation in what we're delivering to the client that actually helps them more to understand what the projects are about. So according to CSI and the Manual of Practice, here are some of the things that are the purpose of outline specs, why they're written. It's try to really to help explain the project to the owners and lenders so that they can understand what it is that they're actually buying or what they're funding. It's to update some of the very preliminary pricing. It could be budget information or very often a square foot or a cubic volume pricing that's done during schematic design. It becomes a checklist for the construction documents so that if we introduce something into the project that we can use the outline spec to make sure that it actually gets carried forward into the construction documents and is represented how it was meant to be according to the outline spec. One of the big items that I see for it is actually the coordination of terminology between specs and drawings. That's something that's a perennial problem, and if we use the outline spec to set some of those terms and get the designers and the specifiers to agree upon it, then it becomes a better roadmap to developing the drawings and the detailing to make sure that the terms are all coordinated.
We have a couple of comments. Arcom used to publish outline specs writing software, but it was inconsistent. That's from Clifford. And Martin, the key words in the AIA are major materials and systems. You do not need to list everything.
Correct. And we'll get into a little bit more about what probably should be included in the outline specs. And you're right that AIA did, or Masterspec and AIA did publish outline specs, and they were recently completely redone, which was actually, and I have an example here to show you later as to where that system actually stands today. Okay, so when are outline specs written? Well, what we just saw in the B101 is that they're actually written during design development, usually, and contractually required during design development. The schematic design, occasionally we see outline specs called for during schematic design. Our experience says that those are very, very brief descriptions, only because most of the decisions haven't really been made. Now, this is when they're actually used for design build delivery methods. And I had a comment from Larry Norden that said that it differs a little bit when you get into negotiated or design build delivery methods, so that the schematic design, the whole document process is actually pushed forward a bit, so that outline specs are generally more often done during schematic design, because design development is the start of when the major components of the project, the actual construction specifications, are starting to be written. So it does depend somewhat upon what delivery method you may be using for the particular project. We commented earlier about what gets included in outline specs. When I think outline spec, the two primary things that I want to try to document are anything affecting cost and anything affecting quality, something that wouldn't be intuitive for a seasoned contractor to know. So what are those kinds of things? And the comment was, we want to document major materials, products, and systems, and that, I believe that's absolutely true. We also want to document things that might be special to the particular project. Things like mock-ups or field testing can be a significant cost factor. Things like extreme control on construction tolerances, for whatever reason that might be, that can drastically affect the labor and the installation costs. So those sorts of things where they may not be intuitive for the contractor, I think have to be documented to try to get the best pricing information and to be able to get the best description of construction projects so that the owner understands what it is that they're buying.
We have a comment from Stephen Lowry.
Yes.
In my experience, outline specs and PPDs are rarely produced and are regarded as throwaway documents. Sometimes schedules don't allow time to produce these along with full construction specs. Many times estimators use preliminary drawings to do cost estimates. Does this align with others' experiences?
Okay. Thanks for the question, Stephen. I'm glad to see you're online here with us today. I think we're going to get to that a little bit later. We have a couple more poll questions, and we'll see what the group has to say about some of those. Whether or not they're throwaway documents is one of my major questions, because I'm looking for ways that we can try to reuse the information so we're only creating it once. I'll explain that a little bit later. I think we'll be getting there before the end of the hour. So how are outline specs written? And most of this is coming right out of CSI's recommendations in the Project Resource Manual. They're organized by master format, And generally, they should be more than a table of contents, although we've seen projects where only a table of contents is produced and actually called an outline spec. PRM, the Project Resource Manual, actually says that section format, the three-part section format, is not required for outline specs. What it does suggest is that level 2 titles, level 2 from master format, and streamlining writing style be used. So what does that mean for us? So level 2 titles are the first, call it broad scope title below the division title being level 1, and the next one in broad scope form would be level 2. And the streamlining, it really is meant just to reduce the verbiage, get it down to the bare minimum, and these are some examples of what streamlining might look like. What I find is that for products, streamlining works very well. If you're talking about installation conditions, streamlining is much more difficult to make it useful or to be able to shorten the text up enough to actually call it streamlining. So let's look at some examples of outline specs and what might be required. So here is, again, from the PRM, what is suggested as outline article titles. So we go through an entire list of what, if you look at it, we have very selected items, the system description, submittals, quality assurance, and warranty that come out of Part 1. Most of what is here is Part 2 and a couple of articles from Part 3. Part 2 really to describe the products. But CSI also goes on to show an example outline spec, which, if you look at how this is arranged, none of those article titles are used. But we do have it written using level 2 titles from master format. So we have very broad scope headings to collect what might be written typically for construction specs at a narrower scope, split up among various sections. So the example that CSI is giving is really more a materials list and does not go much beyond that, even if you go through the entire example that's included in the PRM. So what are the systems that are out there? Clifford had mentioned Masterspec, okay, and here's an example of the current Masterspec system for gypsum board that shows almost a materials listing. Again, there's not much technical information as to what these various products are, really relying on the contractor to know what would be typical for the industry. And then here's an example from SPECTEXT. And so you understand my bias here. SPECTEXT, my firm, is actually responsible for maintaining SPECTEXT. So take what I have to say about SPECTEXT with the with that bias in mind, and whether or not you agree with all of it is you can certainly entitled to your own opinion. But here's a listing from SPECTEXT, still at gypsum board, and showing a little bit more of the technical detail, the reference standards that would apply to more of the major components that are included in the section. And it does go into a little bit of the installation and the standards, the quality standards that are required for the installation. So, yes?
Clifford has a comment. In his opinion, PPDs would replace the outline specs. Did you have a slide that had the categories listed?
Categories. Is this a question from Clifford?
Yes.
Categories of what, Clifford? Help me out. I have some other examples coming up that I want to show too, as some alternatives that we've experimented with. So maybe that'll help explain where we want to take the discussion and then open it up. Okay, so
components, warranties, etc. He said it was 2 or 3 slides ago.
Okay. Is Clifford on the phone, or is he just chatting?
Clifford is chatting.
Okay. Oh, it'd be nice to be able to get you on the phone, Clifford, if you were able to do that.
I think we may have convinced him to go live. One moment. Clifford? Clifford?
Hello, yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I just didn't want to take over your presentation. What I said earlier was I was a member of the task team that prepared the guidelines for the PPDs.
Right.
And this was a discussion that came up in our group many times. I mean, I personally think outline specs are useless. I don't find any use for them, and I think a PPD, if properly prepared, would replace the need for outline specs. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to be pushing. The only reason we didn't come right out and say it in the guidelines is because it would contradict what's actually stated in the PRM. But as you probably know, those are under revision as well. That's under revision. It's going to become practice guides. It's not going to be a single volume tome anymore. It's going to be separate practice guides. So that's evolving as well. And like I said, as a member of the task team, I have a vested interest in seeing more implementation of PPDs as opposed to these undefined outline specs. Even Masterspec couldn't get it straight. Different sections had different categories. You had a slide that was earlier. It was about 2 or 3 or 4 slides ago that listed the components or the elements of an outline spec. And then you showed an example. In the next slide, you showed an example that didn't follow that outline. Mm-hmm. This is the problem that I see with outline specs. See how you have system description, submittals, quality assurance, warranty.
Right.
Those are all like Part 1 items. Then you have components and fabrications. That's Part 2. Then you have preparation, installation, field quality control, and schedules. And then when you look at the example, it doesn't look anything like that.
That's right. That's right. And that was one of the – actually, we've had multiple discussions with subscribers to SPECTEXT, and it all centers on the example outline spec that's shown in the PRM because they're expecting SPECTEXT's outline spec to look like that example.
Right.
And when you try to explain to them the PRM does not suggest that that is the end-all format for outline spec, they're looking at the visual example and saying, no, that is it. So it's another aspect of what people are taking the PRM to mean and looking at the examples but not reading the text that goes with it.
And that's exactly my objection to these. There doesn't seem to be a consensus about what an outline spec is. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole problem. Everybody's is different.
Right.
Whereas if you follow the PPT guidelines, then we're more on the same page.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to that because I actually have some examples of PPD, and we'll talk about that.
All right,
okay,
let me shut up now.
No, I appreciate the comments. Thank you. So let me see if we can get back to how far back out of this I've gone, and we'll just run through this real quickly, get back to where I was. Okay. So some of the pros of traditional outlines, from a specifier standpoint, I think they're fairly easy to produce, mostly because there's not a lot of information, not a lot of detail in the technical aspect. They actually work pretty well as a concise materials list. It does, because of the materials list, it does work well as a checklist going into construction documents. What I find it lacks is that there's not a lot of documentation as to the design process to get to the decisions, and that's probably one of the biggest drawbacks that I see. The inconsistent approach. There's what Clifford was trying to get at, and one of the others that had chimed in earlier, trying to get the document to look like it's coming out of the same office or even from the same design team is sometimes awfully difficult. The basis of design products, we find that early on at design development, our architect clients are very reluctant even to name basis of design products. What they really want us to do is to go in and say, make a decision as to what the product type is and document the product type, but they're not willing to commit to a particular named basis of design. Steve Lowry commented this throwaway document. And I would agree. For the most part, we produce outline specs. We get into construction documents. My first question is, where are all the comments on the outline spec? And we rarely see any. When we ask if the owner has actually read it and commented on it, the answer is usually the architect has never seen comments coming back from the owner. Because it turns into a throwaway document, it's going to require duplicate effort once you start into construction documents. So, because you're going to have to recreate it in another form.
Is Steve Lowry, we're going to call on him.
Is he
His
there?
hand
Does he
is
have
raised.
Okay, go ahead.
He's here, but I think we need to send him the pin, so we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
In the
you want to start the next poll, Erica, and then while you're trying to get Steve on the line?
Sure. Poll is up and launching.
Okay, so we'll just see what of these examples that we just got done showing. For those of you that are using Outline, what form are you actually using? How does your work actually compare to the couple of examples? We had the one with the just the article title listing. We had the PRM example that was the materials list. We have Masterspec and SPECTEXT.
And let me just mention that Tom Gilmore uses outline specs with article titles and finds that it helps organize the information.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to close the poll in just a minute. I think everyone's about done. There you go.
Okay. So we had a few more folks join us, too, because we're now up to about 40 here on the phone call. So,
Yes, we have 36 attendees.
Okay. Now, there, to me, is a surprise that we have the majority of everyone here saying that you use something entirely different. What I'd like to do is see if we can get those that are using something different to chime in on the chat window. Let us know what you're using, or if you'd like to talk about what it is that you're using, let's get you on the phone and open the mics up. Okay.
Poppy
so
uses spec links, and I'm going to make you the presenter now. There you are.
Okay, good, thank you.
Clifford uses PPD. There are no other comments coming through right now.
Okay, well, we'll see what else shows up. Okay, SpecLink is another option out there, and that's one spec system that we're not normally using. So I don't know how prevalent that system is or how many folks are actually using it.
We have a few more coming in, actually. Let's see, Larry Norden. We use PPD-type documents and in-progress specs. Rick Howard, engineers prefer narratives to cover performance of systems. That's all we have.
Okay. So what I want to do is take some time and look at what some of the alternatives may be and show you some of the things that we're doing, and then ask your opinion if any of these things are actually better, worse, have some promise for the future of outline specs, and still I want to get this discussion turned over to hear what some of the folks out there are thinking. So what we've looked at is what I'm calling multi-purpose specifications, and the reason I'm calling it that is because I hate doing anything twice. So if I can do one set of documents and reuse them over and over, that's going to make me happiest. Okay, so the advantage is, and this sort of plays into BIM, that I'm creating the information once, and then I'm using it throughout the project life. The way that I've tried to deal with this is that we can easily add and remove data from what I could produce and call an outline spec, and yet I'm trying to take advantage of our full construction document specifications so that we have all of the notes and all of the editing help available as we're writing outline specs. As oftentimes, even in Masterspec and SPECTEXT, the full text of notes to try to help editors through the specification process is not there. So here's what I'm able to produce as what I'm calling an outline spec. And you'll notice I still do use the part titles, but when I get into part 2, the first heading is 2.2 components. And it may look a bit odd because as you look down through the numbering, it's not sequential. It's something that you have to just accept as being part of Microsoft Word, because the tool that I'm using to produce this thing, there is absolutely no way that I can find to get around this other than manually numbering the paragraphs, and I am not going to go there. But I'm able to produce something that looks like this in fairly short order with a feature using hidden text. So here's what the document actually looks like. It's actually our construction spec that we would use to produce full construction specs, and what we're doing is using tools to hide the text. So everything here shaded in blue is actually hidden text. So if I go back and just show you here the framing components, you can see here at the top of paragraph A, the framing materials, and come back over here, and that's the exact same text. I don't.
Dave, can we have you speak up just a little, please?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for keeping me honest here. So I don't have to recreate anything. I'm using what I will be using for construction specs. What I find is to be able to use this kind of a method, I have to rethink how I'm organizing the text in the construction spec so that I put what would normally be used for an outline at a very high level in the outline structure and use lower levels for things that are less important so that I can not show those quickly by just using hidden text. So
Clifford has a comment. He wants to know if you're essentially hiding and then revealing as necessary as progress is made in producing the whole document.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're doing. Because as we start the construction specs, we'll open this up. We'll see all the blue shaded text, which is all hidden, so we can unhide it as we go. And let me see if I can do this. Here's this same gypsum board section out of our master guides. And if you can see up here on the one toolbar, we have these tools with the blue shading. These are macros that we've written to help us either hide the text, unhide the text, or delete the text. So it's really, from our perspective, fairly easy. So if I wanted everything that was the lower level below the studs and tracks, we have a macro to run, and it automatically selects all of the lower level of that outline branch and hides it. So trying to go through a section and quickly hiding the text to make it into an outline looking form goes very quickly for us. Okay. So just to show you some more of the example here, this is going back to the same text that we were showing, and this is just going through the entire section to show you how much text we're actually hiding. So the discussion that Clifford started out with, preliminary project descriptions, and I started the whole conversation saying that this is what we're actually suggesting to most of our clients as the alternative to outline specs. We think it has some really distinct advantages. We think that it's more easily understood by the owners and lenders. And actually, when we're doing initial interviews with the architects to try to find out what the products are on a project, even if we have a table of contents that we've developed and we're trying to go through the table of contents by master format arrangement, the discussion quickly transfers to a uniformat arrangement. And that's how preliminary project descriptions are written, using uniformat, because the architects are much more in tune with thinking about the project by system and assembly, so that if we start talking about brick and block as a mortar section, all of a sudden the conversation changes and we're talking about exterior wall as though we were talking about preliminary project description and uniformat rather than brick and block. So what we find is that it's even to our advantage to talk to the architects starting the project more in a uniformat or preliminary project description organization than it is to talk to them about it using master format. So,
Dave, I have a lengthy comment from Tom.
From Tom, okay, go ahead.
Bear with me. We do our outline specs in one Excel document, edited very quickly with auto filter keys with all master format 04 divisions, each on a separate worksheet tab. The format is embedded and consultants edit, contribute text, with the result of being consistent format throughout. No paragraph numbering, but we use indents in the paragraph cells to express subparagraphs. By the way, when I use hidden text in the words, the numbers do automatically resequence. I have a button bar key that toggles hide and unhide.
He found a solution to the numbering scheme? I would love to know what that is. Now, I would like to see what you're doing with Excel. If you were willing to share that with a group, I think that would be great. Even if you could do that as a PDF that we might be able to distribute to the group, maybe somebody would be able to learn something from what you're doing. So the one advantage that I see with the preliminary project descriptions, this is a document that we're able to maintain the entire way through the design process. We actually have several clients and we've had several owners insist that once they saw the preliminary project description that it would be maintained for the life of the design. We usually started in schematic design, updated during design development, and updated again during construction documents. And the owners in this case actually used the document as a quality control document so that they had the basis of design documented in the preliminary project description and used that to check the construction documents to make sure everything was actually done that the team had said that they would do. What we also have found is that it's a great way to record options and decisions as you go through the design process, so that in the case of exterior wall, if you start schematic design with 2 or 3 alternatives, that you're able to document all 3 alternatives. You'll be able to document why you may have selected one and when that decision was made and what the basis was for making that decision. That helps the team, the entire team, know what has happened in the design process, and especially if you have consultants that come into the process later, that you do not have to go back and recreate or re-educate them as to how you got to the point where you are, and spending less time trying to bring them up to speed. So here's an example, and this is coming virtually right out of the preliminary project description task team that Clifford's a member of. These are the examples that are being offered as part of the guideline for developing the preliminary project description. So you can describe functional requirements at a very high level for the exterior enclosure, everything that would be affected as part of the exterior enclosure. You can describe it at the next lower level, say at exterior walls, where the wind pressure can be defined as a minimum in this case, and then begin to talk about the actual design solutions for the exterior wall. And Tom had mentioned using a spreadsheet, and we've actually experimented with a spreadsheet example for the preliminary project description. And using auto filter is exactly how we have this set up also, so that as you can see on the right-hand column where we're starting to talk about components, we're actually listing master spec section numbers that would be used to describe those components. So this allows us to use auto filter, and in our case we take it one step farther to use the extractions in Excel, so that we know how many and where each of the requirements are coming for each of the spec sections. So, and in this case, the first column, what you don't see is we're using actually white text in the first column, so that each line in essence is a row in Excel, so that we can sort and do extractions on all 3 columns. And this is the result of one of the pivot tables, the extractions that we're using to know what we need to produce. And here it'll give us a sorted list by section number and what those items are that need to be included in the construction specs. So from our standpoint, preliminary project description is something that's working, I think, very well to help us get started on construction specs and being able to be something that's useful for the entire design team, really for the life of the design process. So, disadvantages, if any. Anybody have comments? Most of what I see with the multi-purpose specs and the PPDs are advantages, especially compared to the traditional separate files for outline specs.
We have a comment from Clifford.
Yes.
He says you're stating all the good reasons for using PPDs over outline specs.
I think we have a convert. I don't know that Clifford actually ever used outline specs, but I'm glad he likes PPDs. Okay. Do you want to start the next poll, Erica, and see if anybody wishes to contribute some more?
Yes, the poll is open.
When we finish this poll, we'll have probably about 15 minutes left in the hour. what I would hope that we could do is start opening it up to more telephone discussion here so that we can get the dialogue going among everybody that's out there.
Clifford said he used Outline Specs about 12 years ago, and he's thinking maybe you should be on their committee. We're going to close the poll in about 10 seconds. Looks like everyone's done.
Okay.
One moment. Do you see it?
Not yet. No, I can't see it.
Okay, just a moment.
Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. Preliminary project descriptions, definitely the winner. I'd like to hear if anybody else is willing to contribute here, just your thoughts on why preliminary project descriptions are such a clear-cut winner. So hopefully you can either type your chat in or raise your hand and let Erica put you on the line.
Okay, we're going to give them back to your screen.
Okay. Anybody chiming in yet, Erica?
Let's see, Clifford has something to say.
Hi.
There you go,
Can you hear me?
Clifford.
Sure.
Can you, okay. The one comment I made after saying that you should be on our committee is that owners, and you said it too, owners really like these things. They really appeal, the format appeals to their understanding, the way they understand things. And I think that's why you're going to see more and more of them come into use. Another comment I made earlier that wasn't conveyed was that, in my experience, government agencies are asking for them more and more. And it's because they're one of the stakeholders on the uniformat revision. So, you know, they have a vested interest in this. They find that they're very useful for generating estimates.
Mm-hmm.
We're also seeing potential for links with BIM software between PPDs and drawings.
Excuse me for just a moment. Dave, can you click Show My Screen so we can get your PowerPoint back, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see that. Do you have
On
that?
the top left-hand corner, a big button says Show My Screen.
Hang on a minute. Nope. Oh, there it is. Just popped up. Got it. We back?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me, Clifford.
Okay.
That's okay. So yeah, I was just saying, you know, agreeing with some of the things that you've already said, and because I think owners really like these things, they're going to be used more and more. I also think that they're well suited for design build projects and integrated project delivery, two other you know, project delivery methods that are becoming more popular.
Right. I think you hit on two good points, Clifford. One is the use with BIM, because the modeling software is actually using the uniformat numbering scheme. When they most familiar with Revit, and the family numbering in Revit is all using uniformat, which ties directly back to preliminary project descriptions, so it's easy to make that link. We actually are working on a new project where the architect is trying to use that linking capability to link up to the preliminary project description, and then from there to the specifications. So maybe we'll have that as a future report as to how that all worked out, but I think that that's a step in the right direction. For me, it's also one where we're creating the information only once, and to me that's important, that we not be wasting our time recreating the same information over and over.
The other advantage you also mentioned, which was getting the architects and designers to think about things that, and decisions that they may have been putting off.
Right.
When you give them something and you say, here, fill in this box, this is what I want to know, it gets them thinking, more about things that earlier, about things that, they sometimes leave to the last minute.
Right, I would agree with you, and hopefully that when they see the PPDs put out there, it prompts them to make more of those decisions.
All right.
Is there anyone else out there with any comments, Erica?
Yes, Larry Norton says the use of initial documents to set the parameters and using it to track and back-check the project.
Okay.
That's all we have for now. Oh, let's see. It looks like someone wants to make a verbal comment. Again, that's Stephen. Stephen, I need you to use your audio pen or type your question in, please. I think you can go ahead, David.
Okay. Well, we're coming down to the end here, so I was just trying to show, what do we think is the future of outline specs? And we're down to the last poll here, Erica, so maybe you could put that up and we can let everyone continue the conversation if they want to jump in. And is Stephen on the air yet?
He is not. Let's see. Do you have that?
Yep, I do. And, looking at this poll, it looks like the overwhelming majority is doubtful that we're going to continue to see traditional outline specs. I think that's been, I more or less started today's presentation with that premise, and I hope I didn't sway anybody to that decision based upon where I started this presentation. But I strongly believe that we're moving away from the traditional outline specs, and for a lot of the reasons that we've been over today.
Okay, we're going to hide the results and make you the presenter again. And I think we have Steve on the line.
Steve?
Hello.
Yes,
hello.
Go ahead.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, Steve.
First of all, I agree with everything that you and Clifford have been saying all along about the usefulness of preliminary project descriptions. Aside from BSD's perspective product that was out many years ago, does anyone know of a uniformat-based guide system? Because it looked like the examples you showed were all done, customized for your practice.
Well, they were, yeah.
And so that's as a specifier that has to be mindful of budgets and hours. I don't have the luxury of being able to create the wheel.
Right. Well, I think what happens is, like anything else, Steve, that you create one and then you end up building upon that as an office master, just like you would for the construction spec. I understand that ARCOM is actually working on a preliminary project description of sorts. I have not seen any examples. And perhaps if there's somebody from ARCOM on today, maybe they can chime in and let us know what might the status be. I have used Perspective for several different projects. Most of those were actually for writing RFPs for design-build contracts rather than as preliminary project description. I find that Perspective is more performance-based without really trying to specify any kind of a solution. So it's not, it doesn't seem to fit well, in my opinion, for documenting a project that that is in design from the design side. But working for RFPs, it works very well.
Yeah. But I think to add to what Clifford said, I think the use of uniformat aids, design teams in addition to government agencies, lenders, owners, because as has been said here, they think in terms of systems and assemblies early on.
Right.
So I think it's a good tool, and I think if there could be some guides that come out there, I think it might really take off.
Yep, there may very well be.
So,
is there anyone else out there like Tom that's doing something entirely different and is willing to share? We have a couple minutes left before we get to the hour.
We have a comment from Liz. Just a moment. No. She had her hand raised. It's down now. So perhaps you've answered her question. No more comments at this time.
No more comments. Okay. Well, we're only a couple of minutes off the hour, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up for today. I appreciate everyone joining us, and if you have any specific comments or if you want to share the examples, and I believe it was Tom that talked about the Excel spreadsheet, I would love to be able to see those. We can use that perhaps as a follow-up for another presentation later. The next meeting we decided was what, April 1st, Erica?
April 1st at 3 p.m. It looks as though Stephen has another comment for you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I don't have a comment.
Oh, I see. Your hand is raised.
Oh.
Put your hand down, Steve.
My mistake.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, so the next meeting scheduled for April 1st, and if anyone has suggestions for future topics, we would like to hear those too. We do have a list that we've been compiling from suggestions that have been made so far, and we'll be drawing from those as we move forward. I do have a guest presenter that will be with us in May. That's from a fellow from the Door Hardware Institute, and he wants to share some of his concerns about how specifications are being written for door hardware. So I hope you'll all be able to join us for that meeting. That'll be in the first Thursday in May.
And
right.
Dave, Clifford wants everyone to know that you can view the guide to PPDs on the national website, and please to make comments.
Okay, yes. It is out there. It was out for comment, and we're still working on that. So, yes, we can still consider comments on that document. All right?
That's
so
it.
thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, David. You may now disconnect.
We'll see all of you next time.